Today, our guest is Jan Edwards from Paving the Way. We will be talking with Jan about the average age of children being targeted, groomed, assaulted, or trafficked online, the tactics used by online child predators, and actions to take for children, parents, or adults who may be victims of online threats or exploitation. Join us today with Jan Edwards. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Jan Edwards. We are so glad to have you with us here today.
Thank you, Penny. It's great to be with you. Even there's glass between us, I'm thrilled to see your face.
Right back at you, my friend. So, Jan, share with our listeners about the mission and work of the Paving the Way Foundation.
Absolutely. So at Paving the Way, who we are is we're committed to disrupting the cycle of child trafficking and online exploitation. And we do that through educational and awareness training programs delivered into schools, after-school programs, churches, PTAs, anywhere there are human beings and they want to have this conversation, we will show up and have this conversation because we know the difference that our training and our education makes for our kiddos, their parents, and in the community.
I love the word you used, disrupting.
Yes.
Isn't that key for so much of what we need to be doing in anti-trafficking?
It really is. It's funny because it took me a while. I've been doing this for 11 years. Yesterday was my 11-year Genesis anniversary. This all started in Ethiopia 11 years ago. And that picture popped up on Facebook. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just so crazy to think one idea, one concept, one person can make that kind of difference out in the world. And you and I and everybody listening to this podcast can be that one person for another inside this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Jan, people have a hard time believing that human trafficking or child exploitation is happening in their community, especially if they live in a rural area.
Mm-hmm.
What is your response to that lack of belief, and what is the average age of a child victim of online sexual exploitation?
Sure. So I'm going to give you some statistics, and then we'll talk about the age and the whole rural thing. NCMEC just put out their most recent, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children just put out their recent child sexual abuse material upload from last year. So in 2021, 2020, there were 21 million reports of CSAM.
Right.
In 2023, it was 36 million. And those are the reported ones. And I tell my friends, if you use the reporting rape math, which is 1 in 9, your listeners are smart enough, they can do the math of multiplying 36 million times 9. That's probably closer to the real number. That's the first thing. The second thing is for those that have seen Sound of Freedom, at the very end, one of them said the United States is the largest consumer of online, key phrase, online child pornography. So if you think about just that phrase right there, online, it doesn't matter where in the world you live. If you have access to one of these, if you have access to a tablet, that has you be vulnerable. Because back when we shut the world down and we gave all our kids tablets or whatever to attempt to do schoolwork when they got home, we gave them access to the world. We also gave the world access to our kids. And we took eyes off our kids that are most vulnerable. So for anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, our children who were getting cared for and looked after and watched in schools by their teachers and their social workers and their principals and their coaches and their PE teachers and all of those teachers, that safety net was removed. And as you know, familial trafficking is a large percentage of child trafficking. Mm-hmm. So we just put our kiddos right back in the space with their abuser. So it's the second thing I want to say. And that really addresses the rural piece of this. I've had several friends of mine call me that are literally in the middle of nowhere. I was just in South Dakota on the Cheyenne North River Reservation educating youth, and the closest hotel was 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
And when I asked, we educated about 100 kids. And when I asked every single age group, 4th through 12th, how many of you have received either a DM, direct message, or a body part picture from someone you don't know? How many hands do you think went up?
Almost all of them, if not all of them.
All of them.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're talking middle of nowhere, South Dakota.
Yeah.
Okay. If you look up house, there's nothing by there. So people's perception of, oh, this only happens over there, could be anywhere. Oh, this only happens in big cities. You got to think again with the advent of this.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, to answer your question, because I already kind of gave a little hint, 4th through 12th grade, the average age that youth are targeted online is 10 to 13.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I started this, Penny, it used to be 11 to 14.
Mm-hmm.
And I was standing in front of a group of 5th graders, and I was kind of gauging how I wanted to have this conversation with them, just kind of checking in where they were. And they were the ones that told me about all the materials that they got when they went home.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's why the age dropped. And I just read an article, Penny. It's so disturbing to me. I just read an article on LinkedIn. I'll see if I can find it to put it in. It's about the parents of the young man up in Canada that recently took his life because he was extorted. There's a group out of Nigeria called the Yahoo Boys, and they target kids specifically for financial sextortion. And if I can, I'm going to read just 2 statistics. In 2021, there were only 139 cases of financial extortion reported to NCMEC. In 2023, there were 26,000.
Yeah.
It's an increase of 18,700%. It's a phishing game for them. They just toss those messages out there and they wait to lure our kids in.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter where you are in the world, you could be a victim.
Yeah. And then for our listeners, the thing you were holding up when you were saying this is all you need was your smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
Both of us are on our laptops. And so it's any of those smart devices and any of those devices that can easily connect to the internet.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was just reading yesterday on LinkedIn also, and you may have seen it as well. And I'm not remembering who actually put out the article, but I'll go back and find it and make sure that we share it. It was NASDAQ was reporting.
Yes, the financial crimes.
Yes.
I did. I read that. The financial crimes. Yes.
NASDAQ was reporting the amount of criminal money that comes in as a result of both labor trafficking and sex trafficking. But we used to report that sex trafficking and human trafficking, I should say, was $150 billion business globally.
Right.
NASDAQ has said it far surpasses that from what they were able to record. And it was into the 300 plus billion, with the sex trafficking being 173 or 178, somewhere in there, billions.
Yes. Yes. Our friend Doug.
That's who it was.
From
yes,
HSI
that's who it was. Exactly. That. Yeah, it was shocking. Absolutely shocking. And yet at the same time, not surprising to either one of us, because this is the area in which we work. And so the listeners know we both also work in federal policy and state policy, and working to help our governments, whether it's at the state level or the federal level, and even at the local levels, write policy that can actually rein in these big tech corporations and hold them accountable to the criminal activity happening on their platforms for which they are financially benefiting. So, that's just a whole conversation that you and I...
It's a whole different dialogue. Yeah, well, but I think what's important for your listeners to really understand, Penny, is we gave some big statistics.
Yeah.
And it's really easy for people to get overwhelmed, like 36 million, who am I? How can I even think about participating or doing anything? And I'm going to give them 3 real simple things to do that will really not cost you any money. And, the first one is, as I always tell, they're like, Jan, how can I help? And wherever you are spiritually, I'm like, pray.
Yeah.
Pray for us. Pray for your local organizations. Pray for survivors. Pray for those that are in the realm of traffickers that they stop trafficking people. Pray for your legislator. Like, just pray.
Yeah.
Because we all need it. That's the first easy thing you can do. I said the second thing you can do is go find your local organizations and ask them what they need. How can you help? We're moving into a new office space. And I posted on Facebook, I'm in search of a copy machine. Right?
I saw that.
So, yeah. So I've got people going, hey, Jan, do you still need a copy machine? I'm like, yes, I do. We had 3 or 4 people go, Jan, I wish I'd known. I just gave away my copy machine. But, right. So you just never know. It's like, what do you need? Because we all know somebody that could probably deliver that thing that they need. So that's,
right.
An hour out of your time.
Right.
And then the last thing is, follow that or those local organizations on your social media platforms and see what they're up to.
Yep.
Because you and I post information on federal legislation, state legislation, and local legislation. So that's the conversations we can start to have with each other and with our local politicians.
Right.
I think that's the piece that people are missing is it doesn't take anybody special, Penny, to pick up the phone and call our legislators. They work for us.
Absolutely.
And you've had great success locally in shutting down illicit massage businesses. And that's one person having conversations with people that they know to make the kind of difference. So real simple things. Pray for us. Go find a local organization you can help. And then, follow those people on social media and either share their posts, comment their posts. So we can boost the algorithms. If they're here, we might as well use them.
Mm-hmm.
And then call your local representative. Once you get a hold of that piece of legislation, once you get a hold of that information, be like, hi, I just read this. I want you to support this. I'm a constituent. I live in the zip code. Please support this. Takes less than a minute. And they need to hear from us because we are the we the people part of the we the people of the Constitution.
And they're definitely hearing.
It's our job.
Exactly. And they're definitely hearing from big tech.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most simple things that I share with people is don't buy sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't buy sex. How about that?
Don't buy sex. Don't do hands-on. Don't buy it online. Don't have an account of where you can purchase to watch sexual torture.
Yep.
Don't buy it.
Yeah. Just stop that.
Yeah. Just stop that.
Real
exactly.
Simple,
just stop
real
that.
Simple.
Yeah. Yeah. Super easy.
Mm-hmm.
So Jan, share with our listeners what grooming is and the tactics used by groomers, traffickers, and online child predators.
Grooming is it's a really big word for a very simple concept. It's, I'm going to break into song, getting to know you, getting to know all about you. That's really what grooming is.
Yeah.
Oh, you like soccer? I like soccer too. Oh, you like that band? I like that band too. Oh my gosh, I saw you were at XYZ Park yesterday. I love to go to that park. It's finding that common ground with our children and other people too. So it's just really getting to know someone, and they do it so quickly. Because here's the thing, Penny, I've got a sad but brilliant example. Friday, I got a phone call from a friend of mine, and they were like, hi, can my kiddo talk to you? I'm like, of course, right? Sure enough, this little human being was being recruited and groomed online by an adult male, who said they were 16. They weren't. Of course, this other little person claimed they were 16. They're not. They're 13. And the conversation, it started raunchy. Like it just started that way. And this little person had no idea how to respond. So they went out to Snapchat. And apparently there's somebody on Snapchat that it's Ask Me Anything. I think there's several of those. Mm-hmm. Ask Me Anything.
Yeah.
So this person asked, how do I respond? They gave him a whole body of text. That person copied and pasted and put it into the dialogue, making that person think that they knew what the heck this person was talking about. They had no idea. 13 years old. They had no idea how to respond. And when I asked this little human being, I said, what was it that had you engage? 3 things: attention, bored, and I wanted to vibe and kind of fit in and be in the groove like everybody else. So our predators know this. And just like the Yahoo boys, they fish. It's literally fishing. They will post 100 DMs, "You're beautiful," to see who responds. They'll post 100 DMs, "You're handsome." They don't care who they extort. It's not a male, female, or whatever thing. It is a human being. I'm going to make you feel bad about yourself, so you send me money. So it's just that connection. And the other piece on the other side of that, Penny, that I really want your listeners to understand is grooming's just the beginning. Another piece of this before recruitment is enticement. Now, enticement is illegal. If a person entices a child with the intent to commit sexual harm, whether online or in person, it's illegal. It can be up to a felony, third-degree felony. So when people assume that our children understand this, they don't. Their brains aren't fully developed yet.
Right.
When people assume parents understand this, they don't, because the parent of this little person, the dad, immediately made them feel guilty, like it was their fault. I was like, no. That's not how that works. Well, we had a conversation. I'm like, yeah, how many times? Once. Okay. Their brain is literally, you can look, there's scientific research backing up what I'm going to say.
Right.
Their brains are literally scrambled from the beginning of puberty, which is 10, 11, all the way through 14, 15. The rewiring of this part of the brain is happening continually. So, and that's why people so appreciate middle school teachers.
Right. Right.
Everything we learned in 5th grade, we forget in 7th and 8th grade because this thing's being rewired. And why parents are like, but I told you that yesterday. It just doesn't retain. It's a continual conversation. So parents don't understand that. And so it's natural. Well, I told them once, they should remember. Well, our brains don't work that way. I'm sorry.
Right.
Even with repetition, if people go, it's just like riding a bike. Well, if I haven't ridden a bike in 20 years, it's going to take me a minute to remember how to get my balance and ride a bike.
Right.
Same thing with this kind of conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And you and I grew up in about the same time period. I used to think in school, how many times do we have to diagram a sentence? You do it over and over and over again. And that is right in that middle school, junior high age category that you are. You're doing that same exercise over and over and over again and learning and understanding. And you're spot on, absolutely spot on.
And so the last piece of that is our teachers and our social workers and our SROs, anyone in the school system has to understand what's happening, because this little girl is being victim shamed by people who don't understand the laws or the legislation, and that they cannot consent. You're under 18. You legally cannot consent to any of this. So this is not her fault.
Right.
Or his fault. Or but it's not your kiddo's fault.
Right. Absolutely.
If I can press in on anything, that's the thing I want parents to really grasp. It's not your child's fault.
Yeah, exactly.
They want to fit in.
Right.
They want to belong. They want to feel like they're important. They want to feel like they're loved. They want to be hip and cool and inside a groove thing.
Yeah.
And these people know it, and then they go after them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too is oftentimes parents are so overwhelmed by the rapid change in how technology works that most parents don't even know how to set their filters. They don't know how to set all the parental controls. And I was just watching a wonderful video put out by a mutual friend of ours, Chris McKenna, with Protect Young Eyes. He just put out, and he does this brilliantly on social media, but he just put out a real short, and it was very fast video with parents whose children have an iPhone, and how unfriendly iPhones are. And I'm fairly experienced in being able to communicate on filters. I was watching Chris's video thinking, oh my gosh, that's so fast. I don't think I caught most of that. But you know who did? Kids, predators, they're catching all of that. But parents are going, wait a second, okay. Oh my goodness, I don't know this, but my child knows how to get around all of this quickly. My child knows what VPNs are. My child knows all of this language because these children are growing up in a digital age.
Yeah.
They're having smart devices in their hands, like how you and I were learning how to walk. they're learning how to use these smart devices at that age. They're so far beyond adult abilities to really
comprehension of a cell phone. Yeah, they are literal digital natives.
Yes. Yeah.
Where those of us born that have been around for a little while, we're immigrants.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're new to this, and it doesn't matter how much day in and day out we stay with this. They're changing and upgrading every single day.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that you said about the video is I remember watching TV with my daughter and she'd fly through the guide. She just, and I'm like, whoa, hang on. And so I started doing some research. Their brains are wired differently than ours to pick up data faster.
Yes. Moving data.
Yeah.
And hats off to Chris McKenna and Protect Young Eyes and a lot of the organizations out there that are doing this type of work, because we repeat this over and over again on this podcast that folks need to understand that there is no federal legislation in place at all when it comes to artificial intelligence in our country.
Nope.
And there's very, very little federal legislation in place for online child protection. The last significant piece of legislation that passed for online child protection was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Think about how much technology has changed in those 25 years. It's rapid fire, and the most regulated industry in our country is government. So people often think that government's, spying on their cell phones. Well, government's regulated, and so government is not necessarily the organization that you need to be afraid of. It's the criminal enterprises out there that have the Wild West right now, right at their fingertips, because there's nothing reining them in.
Mm-hmm.
There's very little out there really putting those protections in place. And oftentimes people think that, well, that's illegal. That's got to be illegal. Yeah, no, it probably isn't.
No.
There may not be a law for that.
Currently, there's only one state, as you and I both know, Texas, that has made it a felony to purchase another human being.
Oh, no, Montana.
Okay, Montana now too. Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for doing that. So now there's two.
Yeah, we passed ours in 2023. It took us 8+ years to get there, but we got that piece of legislation that came right out of our task force.
We keep introducing it, and yeah.
It'll get there.
Yeah, so that's to say to, again, everybody listening, this is an everyone fight.
Right.
It's not a me or you. This is very bipartisan. This isn't a I don't have kids.
Right.
Because there are scams that they're going after senior citizens and elderly, really anybody over 65 that doesn't understand AI and how this works. There's audio AI now. Well, they will dub somebody's voice and pretend it's your kiddo calling you. Yeah, I don't care if your kid's 30 or 40 and you're 60 or 70 and they're like, Mom, Dad, I need help. I need money now. You're going to go do that because your prefrontal cortex, I tell people we've left the building. When we are under high trauma, we have left the building. Our amygdala, this little body part back here in our brain, takes over.
Right.
We stop doing the rational thinking and we go act. Well, if I'm a 65-year-old woman, right, or a 75-year-old man, and I think I'm going to go to the bank to get money to save my kid, and then I go to some dark warehouse, I could be killed.
Right.
All because I didn't understand that there was I'm holding up my phone, an AI audio app that people can download, clone my kid's voice or my voice,
right,
and do harm.
Right.
And so we instruct when we're out talking to kiddos and parents and teachers and everybody, I tell everybody, I don't care how old you are, everyone needs a family safe word. Everyone.
Yeah, I agree.
Because adults can be scammed, kids can be scammed, elderly can be scammed.
Yeah. And
so you have that safe word. I tell people, you just got to practice, breathe. Just take one breath, and that's going to bring your oxygen back to the front part of your brain, and you're going to be able to go, what's the safe word? And if they don't know, you've now been scammed. And now you know, versus going through all that trauma thinking something's happening to a family member or loved one.
And those criminal actors can do all of what you described in a matter of minutes.
Yes.
They can have all of that within the different AI programs that are out there and the software programs that are out there. And we're even talking, teenagers, young kids can do that within AI in a rapid fashion as well.
Yes, they can.
And you and I both know it's happening in large numbers.
Everywhere. Everywhere. Yeah. It's happened here in Florida. Yeah. I don't know if you saw the new piece of legislation that was passed here. I think we're one of 8 or 9 states now that has passed age verification.
Yeah.
I wish it was slightly different, but I'm thrilled we got it through.
Yeah. It's a tiny step.
Anybody under the age of 14 after January 2025 cannot have access to social media, online gaming, Pornhub, any of that. You have to have parental permission, 14 and 15 and 16 and up. You have to show age verification. So as much as people, in particular, big tech, is going to be a little upset about that, good.
Yeah.
You should have put the guardrails up. You should have taken care of our kids, but you didn't, knowingly what was happening, and you chose not to. So, okay, we'll do that now for you.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. We passed that also in 2023 in our Montana State Legislature. It wasn't the bill that we wanted passed. It was a much, much, much lesser version, but baby steps, we'll take the small steps we can.
Take the win.
And that goes back to the word you said at the beginning, disrupting. Mm-hmm. Is it a solution? No, it is not a solution. Kids can use the VPN to get around and show that they're in a different state. Mm-hmm. Criminal actors can use VPN to show they're in a different state.
Oh, for sure.
A fake ID, all these other types of things. However, it does cause disruption. Mm-hmm. Pornhub in Montana, when we passed the age verification, Pornhub shut down in Montana. For us, we said, temporary win, short temporary win.
Absolutely.
We'll take it.
You betcha.
We'll take that. It's disrupting.
Same thing happened in Texas. I'm praying the same thing happens here. Somebody said, because when I went to South Dakota, I was working with my friend that works for ICAC.
Yeah. And
she sent me one of the articles, and they said the viewing of pornography online in the states that have implemented this has dropped down to single digits. I'm like, good.
Yeah.
People don't understand the bridge between pornography and online exploitation and human trafficking. And
right.
Part of that is it desensitizes you to a human being. That's a human being over there, and they are not choosing this. It may have started that way, but you and I have both spoken to former individuals that were in that industry, and they're like, oh yeah, at first it sounded great. And you're into it a short amount of time, realizing you have no rights, you have no say, you have no choice. You signed a contract you didn't really fully understand. And now you're doing things that you would never, ever, ever imagine yourself doing.
Right. And the money isn't what you were promised either. Pornography today is nothing like what it was back in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Mm-mm. It is nothing like that. It is violent.
Yes.
It is what you and I would describe as torture when it comes to children.
Absolutely.
And you and I both agree that that's the legal language that should be attached to that.
Absolutely.
It should be considered torture and should be penalized as if it's torture. But yeah, it's nothing like what it was years and years ago.
That's the pinup girls. This is well beyond the pinup girls. Yeah.
This is violence, and it's usually unwanted. It's usually forced. It's usually coerced. It's threats. It's all of the different types of things that come in with it when we talk about trafficking. Mm-hmm. So, Jan, you've given us some great tools to work with, and I'm going to ask you for a couple more. What are actions for children and parents and adults to take if a child or an adult is being threatened or exploited online? And then if you can give us 2 to 3 actions that you recommend parents take to help protect their children online.
Cool. So you're going to have to say that all over again a second time. And I want you to repeat it for them. So give me the first half first. I'll answer that, and then I'll answer the second part. So what was the first part?
What are actions that children and parents and adults can take if a child or an adult is being threatened or exploited online?
Okay. So I'm actually going to answer this threefold. First, I want to say a couple things that you can do to prevent it. Okay. Because I just assume that's why we do what we do. Mm-hmm. I just assume prevent any human being from experiencing this, because standing side by side with this family, from Friday night to yesterday to today and through forever, no one should be going through this. 3.5 hours with the police officers, the experience of talking to the school, talk about disruption in one's life. No one should have to go through that. So there's 2 real simple things that 3 really, that we can all do that will decrease the opportunity for exploitation. The first thing is to put everything on social media private, everything. Now, I'm a public figure. I don't have my stuff on private. I do it knowingly. You should see some of the DMs I get. I giggle and then I delete them. So very clear that being private makes a difference, because when we talk to the kiddos, half of them have it on private, half of them don't. We talk about why. Why do you want it on private? Will you reduce the opportunity for someone to slide a DM in or some inappropriate picture, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing, is put everything on private. The second thing is to turn off your location on every app on your phone. For an iPhone, you go into your settings, you go into privacy and security. The very tippy top, it says locations. And you click on that and it'll take you to every single app on your phone that has access to your location. Now, why is that important? Well, there's a little app people have downloaded that if you don't have your locator off on your camera and you upload a picture onto your social media site, they can get your latitude and longitude location from one picture. So I advise everyone to turn everything off, or while using, like your maps, or if your calendar, you're trying to make a hotel or airline reservation. All of mine is off. Everything is off. And then the last piece is make sure your AirDrop's off. And people go, well, what about contacts only? I said, well, with the new iPhone update, okay, and you don't turn this off, people can walk right by you and have your data. Now they're technically a contact. They're like, oh. I said, so you want AirDrop off unless you're with a group of friends, you're out having a good time, people took pictures, great, everybody turn the AirDrop on, share pictures, turn your AirDrop off right now. Adults, I go, you want to have a good time? I said, go to an airport and turn on your AirDrop and see what shows up on your phone. And they're like, wait, what? And I go, oh yeah, no. I said, it's frightening. So those are three, I say simple because they are. It just might take a little minute for you to go find your location settings, but you just go through every single app and it's either only while using or never. Much like what happened to my little human on Friday. I'm actually wearing my bracelet that says, stop, block, talk, and report. That's what there is to do. So you stop the interaction immediately. You want to go talk to somebody. You're a trusted adult. You want to call your non-emergency number, another friend, right? You want to stop the action. You want to have a conversation with somebody. You want to block them so they no longer have access to you. And then you want to report it. So you want to report it three places. One, you want to report it on the app that they're abusing you on. You want to report it to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children if it's a child. If it's an adult, you can do the cyber tip line for Homeland Security. And lastly, you want to call law enforcement. Now, there's two distinctions with law enforcement. There's the non-emergency number, pretty obvious. Yes, that individual might be experiencing trauma. However, they're not harming themselves. They're not harming another. They're not bleeding out, right? It's not a quote, quote, 911 emergency call, okay? So that's why you call the non-emergency number. Law enforcement officer was at this person's house within 45 minutes, and this person spent 3.5 hours with us, okay? Walking through everything there was for us to do. So that's if something's happening right now, no one's bleeding out, especially for a child. And then, there's always the making sure that you do, calling DCF and letting them know, your local child protective services, so they have it on record. And the reason why you want to report it to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, again, so they have it on record. If there's videos that have been shared or pictures that have been shared, they can send it to Take It Down /NCMEC, and they can hash it and take it in and have it be removed, right? So that's a child. That's a separate and distinct, anyone under the age of 18, that's a separate and distinct thing to happen. Now, if you're an adult, very similar, very similar. You want to stop the interactions immediately. Again, you want to talk to somebody and you want to block them. You also want to report it, again, to the non-emergency number. And there are several cyber tip lines. If you go to the NCMEC Take It Down website, they'll ask you, are you under 18 or over 18? If you click in over 18, they'll actually direct you to the cyber tip line for adults. And the reason why we want to talk to kiddos, parents and teachers too, so it's not a It's not either or, it's an and. However, our children are with their devices. Yes, I'm holding up my cell phone. They're with their devices 24/7. Parents can't be with them. Coaches can't be with them. No one can be with them 24/7. But their little phones are. And so it's imperative that they know what to do. This little human being knew something was wrong and wasn't quite sure what to do, but they trusted their gut. It's the same thing with adults. I have a friend who talks about doxing, because that's kind of what happens to adults. She thought she was in a committed relationship, and they'd been dating for 3 or 4 months. 3 or 4 months. They weren't intimate the first night. It was 3 or 4 months. They were intimate, 3 or 4 months into the relationship, and this person recorded everything they did and then threatened her to say, if you don't send me money, if you don't, I'm going to send this. And they actually ended up sending the video to her boss, because the boss couldn't comprehend. Well, of course you knew you were being. No, I didn't know I was being video recorded, and that's not who I am. I'm a PhD. They fired her. Not believing her, but believing some idiot. It's like, hang on a second. Why would you even? Anyway, now then, if there is a child that runs away, if there is a missing person, if there is a child talking about self-harm, if there's an adult talking about self-harm, because there's a lot of guilt and shame and embarrassment that comes with, I thought I was in a relationship. He sent me a picture first, or she sent me a picture first, and I sent a picture in response. I didn't know, because it's a momentary feeling of euphoria. Someone likes me, someone loves me, someone accepts me. And then off that picture goes, and boom, the extortion begins. There's a lot of thoughts that go through your head. I get it. And so that's when you want to call 911. When someone's on the edge and you don't quite know how to bring them back. And there's social services available in every single state. You just got to be able to know where they are, and more importantly, ask for them. We have 2 really great organizations here in Florida. One is called One More Child. The other is Flight Center. And we have Devereaux down here too. And Flight Center and One More Child both have mobile units that will go out to where the child is that's experienced, online sexual abuse or extortion or sextortion or human trafficking, physical human trafficking. And, they wrap services around the family. And to me, it's the family getting services is as important as that child, because the parents, they don't know how to be with this child right now. They can comfort them, but it's like, I'm angry at this person for causing this harm to my child, but I don't want my child to think I'm, so how do I process how I'm feeling without harming my child? Siblings, if there's siblings around, right? There's an older and a younger sibling. So how does the little one experience and not be petrified? How does the older one not, right? So there's so much damage done around our kiddos. And to be able to know that there are services, every single state's got somebody. And one of my favorite tools that we share everywhere we train is the Teen Line out of California. It's manned by teens, 7 days a week, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. And these teens go through over 100 hours of trauma training.
Wow.
And so sometimes kids, they just want to talk to another kid without being judged. Now, what's great about this Teen Line is the teens will say, you can text a question too, but they'll say, look, I'm here. This is a no judgment zone. I will listen, whatever you have to say, mostly we can work our stuff out. And if they hear something about self-harm, or they hear about harming for another, they're like, we will bring a professional in. Like, you're not going to be doing this alone, right? We got you. We're sending someone right now because you matter. We also have other bracelets that we give our youth, and because we test hashtags. So we test the theory out in the community for a little while, and then we'll produce some materials. And really for the past 18 months, hashtag you matter has been the most popular piece that our kiddos want, because they don't feel like they matter. Mm-hmm. And we want them to know that they matter. We want them to know that they're not alone. We want them to know it is never their fault. Mm-hmm. And we got their back.
Yeah.
And if I can't have your back and your parents can't have your back, we got great service providers that can have your back to bridge that gap from the time where you are to where your parents can catch up to.
Absolutely. I want to mention the phone number, and we'll have this on our website as well and with this podcast. But you mentioned Teen Line. And for folks that may want to learn more, they can go to teenline.org, TEENLINE.org. It's a California Youth Crisis Line. The phone number to call is 800-852-8336. 800-852-8336. And I really like what they have to say when I Googled it in one sentence. And it says, Teen Line is a nonprofit organization that uses a national crisis hotline to provide teen-to-teen education and support before problems become a crisis. Excellent. Jan, that's great information. Everything you provided today is outstanding and so good. Both you and I wish this wasn't the work that we were in. We both wish that. But we have seen great strides happening. We've also seen really scary things happening at a rapid pace when it comes to the internet. But thankfully, organizations like Paving the Way Foundation and some of the other organizations that you shared down in Florida, and just like what you said, states have organizations, nonprofit organizations, agencies that are out there. Rural areas, yes, much more difficult time in finding those resources, but find someone in your state, one of those organizations in your state that can help you. Oftentimes it's calling the FBI. People don't realize that they can call a regional FBI office. Google that for your region. Find that FBI office and report that as well, and see if there's a victim specialist that is able to help in some way, shape, or form.
And children's advocacy centers too. They're all over the country. Children's advocacy centers for sure.
Yes.
Because we work real closely with law enforcement here. I, like you, am one of the, you're a co-chair and a founder. I'm a co-chair of the Central Florida Human Trafficking Task Force. And law enforcement coaches us because we're with young people every single week. Okay. And they disclose often. And when they disclose, law enforcement is always like, wait until law enforcement gets there because I don't want this child to have to repeat this story over and over and over and over again. You can call for victims advocates, you can call for FBI, you can call for Children's Advocacy Center because the CACs are great in making sure that kiddos are taken care of. And not everyone has great internet, but if you've got cell phone service, a lot of these services have text to talk or text to call. So someone can text the Teen Line. There's a text number for the Teen Line too. So they may not be able to talk, but they can text and get some questions answered for them.
Right. And know someone else is on the other end of that phone, to talk them through what's happening and help them to have a better understanding of what's happening. The other thing I wanted to share is you use the phrase ICAC, and I just want to make sure people know that that means Internet Crimes Against Children. And oftentimes your state or your local or your federal law enforcement will have an ICAC agent or officer that you can also report to. And you can actually call those non-emergency numbers and say you need to speak to an ICAC agent or ICAC officer. Even rural states have ICAC resources that are funded through public safety dollars. Jan, thank you so much. You have provided outstanding information for folks, no matter where they're living in our country today. You have provided absolutely outstanding information. Thank you, Jan Edwards from Paving the Way Foundation, for your voice, for being our guest today, and for the important work you are doing.
Thank you.
To learn more about the Paving the Way Foundation or to book Jan as a speaker, and please book her as a speaker. She travels all over the United States speaking. Please make that phone call to Paving the Way Foundation or go to their website at pavingthewayfoundation.org. We will have information on the topics discussed today on our task force website at yhttf.org. Again, Jan, thank you. And to our listeners, thank you for listening and thank you for sharing this journey with us. Join us next week when our guest will be Dallas Knight from Skull Games. If you suspect labor or sex trafficking in the state of Montana, please call 833-406-7867. If you are being trafficked and need help, please call 911. If you suspect labor or sex trafficking outside of the state of Montana, please call your regional FBI office. You may also call the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888.